But one thing, Emma, that is a good place to start is people talk about how Biden is deteriorating. He probably has dementia. He might not make it. He's been saying insane stuff since he was a baby. Like, I mean, I trace back at least in the 1970s. Some of the craziest stuff he said was in the 70s. So, and then he had these 2 aneurysms that nearly killed him in the 80s. And then he's here now and he's bumbling and he can't say what's the right website and he confuses his wife and his sister. All that's relevant. I'm not saying that's not entertaining and interesting and good content, but we're missing the point is that he was saying insane stuff 50 years ago and is still in position of unfathomable power.
Yeah, well, that was one of my first questions, because you have this section at the beginning, I think it's even in the intro of the book, where like I was laughing out loud reading it, and it's so in your tone and in your voice, where you almost like give a chronology of all of the humiliating moments that Biden has had that you can even write. You know, you pick the highlights, but they're all over the place. Like, they're not starting now. Like, they're from the beginning. And his career seems like in that chapter almost like marked by like humiliation after humiliation, mostly over lies that he's told. And you open the book with this like dizzying story where you show that like every single sentence is an embellishment or a lie. And so, you know, after researching this book and like kind of getting in the mind of Joe Biden, do you think that this is like pathological? Like, how do you explain this? Is it unintentional? Is it intentional? Does he think he's going to get away with it? Like, because it doesn't make sense, and a normal person doesn't act this way. And you don't seem to have the thesis that he's an idiot. So what is that?
No, and the thesis is he's definitely not an idiot. And if anything, we've way underestimated his intelligence level, in particular his fastball. I'm not saying he's some sort of a genius and he's just, you know, it's all of it's a big hoax. I'm not saying any of that. He definitely has a odd brain, let's put it that way. But he has been more sophisticated in getting what he wants, and it's not a coincidence that he's been able to do that. And if you trace back some of the insane things he said, he's gotten away with all of them, because at a minimum, even if he didn't get to be president the first couple times he ran, didn't do very well, and kind of in some ways lucked into the presidency this time, though not entirely by any means, but in some ways he lucked into it. He's been very resilient, and part of his resilience, I think, creates more resilience because he's gotten away with plagiarizing in college. He was a horrific law student. Emma, Joe Biden was one of the most influential Americans on the court in the last century. And he did this by borking Robert Bork, which got us Justice Kennedy, which got us stuff like the preservation of Roe v. Wade for decades and decades. All that's Joe Biden. He also set the template for how to character assassinate conservative nominees when he repeated the borking with Clarence Thomas, the high-tech lynching, which, of course, didn't go as well in the moment. But that's why we saw what we saw with Brett Kavanaugh, as we already the playbook, and the playbook was Joe Biden's playbook. He got away with all this stuff. He plagiarized consistently from this guy Kinnock from the UK, just citing verbatim passages of speeches and just pawning it off as an innocent mistake. Does this all the time. And he plagiarized 5 pages from one thesis he did in college, got away with it, pleading desperately to not get expelled after this. He got away with it. He still got his degree and again went on to shape the Supreme Court. So there's nothing in Joe Biden's past that gives you the impression that he wouldn't have a presidential-sized ego and believe that he can get away with anything and he can achieve anything. And that's been instilled in him since he was a boy. And no one really bothered to look into that. Like, where does he get this sort of preternatural self-confidence? It was instilled in him as a boy, and him getting away with bloody murder, figuratively speaking, throughout his life just reinforced all of it.